trees in the fall, and Samantha is going to tell us all about that. So when we plant our trees this fall, they're happy. I love this picture.
Thanks. Trees are perfectly positioned to teach us patience. When I consider planting trees, I think it's the most selfless and wise thing. Growing up, some of my best friends were trees, and even now, which sounds funny, but I think you have to be aware of the future when you're thinking of trees.
You know, we were military and we moved every 1.5 to 2 years. And everywhere we moved, I planted a tree. And it's fun to go back sometime and look at those.
Yeah, they're very sentimental with, you know, people plant trees in different cultures when you have a birth. I spent a lot of time in India, and they even worship the trees as divine life. So it's one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself and the planet. So this photo here is of a native tree, a red bud, in its full glory. It's one of the spring bloomers. And I have a lot of them on the property where I work. That's where I do most of my gardening, is with toddlers at a nature preschool. So that's where I get a lot of my inspiration. So fall is a wonderful time to plant. I always recommend using your imagination before you undertake any gardening. Start to envision how you want to feel, what you want it to look like. A huge topic of conversation right now is who is entitled to shade and who is entitled to cool temperatures and a comfortable lifestyle. And I say everybody is. So planting trees, especially native trees, can make for a very healthy earth. Especially now, planting in the fall allows the tree, you can tune in with their natural cycle, so the energy is going down under the ground. They have time to establish some strong roots before they're prompted by the sun to start working again. So next slide. So in your musing, there's some things to consider to be successful. This photo here is of a sweet bay magnolia tree, which is incredibly fragrant and almost prehistoric looking when it blooms. The children just love playing with these flowers. And this is an evergreen, so you want to consider, you want it to be deciduous, and you want, you know, fall color, leaf dropping, or do you want something that will maintain its greenness over the winter in our region? Are you looking for privacy, or you want to make some kind of natural barrier? Think about, you know, how it will look in different times of the year. Also in that vein, how it will support, as Patrick mentioned, our local life. So having minimal gaps or no gaps in supporting what's presenting through the seasons. So diversity is very important. You might be thinking about how to increase your property value or its, you know, attractiveness. Shade is a huge one as our temperatures increase. We have 2 huge maple trees on the property that allow us to picnic all summer long. We can even eat lunch with a light rain. Just makes for a lot more options in your usage.
Samantha, can I mention one thing that?
Please, yeah.
One thing to keep in mind is utilities, both overhead and underground, including things like septic fields. We have a drain field because we don't have a sewer line in our neighborhood in Fairfax. And so that's one thing. You know, I've made a lot of mistakes as a gardener. One of the ones I made recently was, well, in the last 4 or 5 years, I put some trees out in front of the house I'm in, and I didn't realize that they're oak trees, long-lived oak trees. I didn't realize they were going to interfere with the power line that's directly overhead. So they're going to have to be pruned. So to keep those, you know, utilities, it's not glamorous or anything. That's just something to keep in mind.
No, absolutely. That's really heartbreaking to see trees become really lopsided and stressed.
Yes.
We have a huge sweet gum in front of the school that is under the utility, and they have a lot of work on their hands, I think, so they're not always as careful and courteous about how they prune too. So yeah, you want to set your tree up for a full life and full expression. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that will lead us to our next slide of things to consider that are environmental. As Patrick mentioned, you want to be aware of how big the plant can get, your tree can get, so at full maturity. Best practices, soil conditions, water, amount of sunlight, and generally when you get a tree, this information is provided on the tag or pretty readily available. Yeah, again, the wildlife, wind exposure, and microclimates. You want to really have all the levels to support a healthy ecosystem. And this photo is a red maple, of course, which is native and also draws a lot of attention. It's a big show. So next slide, Shirley. Again, so selecting the proper site, you want to have your utility lines marked, and the information is here on who to call. You want to consider shallow-rooted trees, like the sugar maple, ash, and tulip tree. They could be susceptible to tip over. Yeah, again, not too close to any power lines or sidewalks, driveways where you're going to run into a lot of crackage and a lot of work for you. And this is one of my favorites, the tulip tree. They have those beautiful little yellow and neon orange blooms. Next slide. So down to logistics. Planting a tree sounds simple enough, right? You dig a hole and you put it in the ground, but there are options as far as how trees are sold, or how you even transplant them. They're generally grown in a pot or in a burlap, in a root ball, or bare roots. So it'll have no soil, the roots will be exposed. And all three have different advantages and disadvantages. Of course, if you're gritting a tree inside a pot, you want to make sure that it's not too pot bound. You know, the roots haven't completely solidified. Of course, the danger of having it bare root is that it could potentially be damaged if it gets, if you get a quick freeze. So you kind of have to weigh your options. Whatever type of tree, you want to dig a hole 2 to 4 times as wide as the roots. If it's bare root, you want to spread the roots out and then backfill with the same soil, the native soil that it's being transplanted into. The recommendation now is not to add amendments, which could stunt its growth later on. You want it to be accustomed to the mother soil. Yeah, if it's dry, you want to maybe the day before water it to prepare it. Go to the next slide.
Samantha, could I throw one more thing in here?
Yeah,
which is I've bought many trees in containers, like, I don't know, they're 5-gallon or whatever they are, and they're root bound, and the roots are wrapped around, multiple times, and it's very tight in there with the roots. And you can't just put that into the ground. You have to spread those roots out. Even if you lose the soil around it, it's better to spread, pull them apart. And it's like been a battle with some of the ones that I've gotten, just to pull them apart without damaging them. But again, if you buy a tree that's in a pot and it's tight and wrapped, and you will want to split it up. I mean, not break it apart, but spread those out, and spread them out as far as possible. So, and in that case, you're actually essentially putting bare roots into the soil. But it's if you don't do that, you can get tree girdling, which is well, the tree will not be able to stand on its own, successfully. So, and it can strangle itself. So anyway, spread out the roots.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that problem? I don't know whether you've ever bought any that were like that, or.
Yeah, all my experience with planting trees has been bare root. I've gotten them all from like Spark Brothers online sources. So no, but I have transplanted plenty of house plants and ran into that problem where you just kind of have to massage, maybe a deep massage for trees. But
so I'm going to interrupt. Simon has a question. What if the mother soil is extremely compacted clay, the Northern Virginian soil? Wouldn't an amendment help in conjunction with the mother soil?
So, the best I could probably mention is that you want to prepare the soil before. So that soil test could probably help you in knowing if you have to add anything additionally. I think you just don't want to shock it into like a space that's highly concentrated so that it doesn't, the roots don't go outward. But maybe my colleagues have some experience with that. Patrick or Carl.
Yeah, I would just say that, you know, if you do add amendments, and I do this, I used to think that, you know, don't put any amendments. It's got to become used to living in this soil. But on the other hand, number one, the amendments do improve the nutritional possibilities. They hold nutrients better, and they will keep the soil around the new roots, or the roots you just put in, you know, aerated. They'll have that. My feeling is you do, you know, I don't go overboard, you know, I don't put a lot of amendments, but I put some in, and it gets the tree, gives it a little leg up, and eventually it's going to have to move into, you know, the native soil. But to get it started, you know, some amendments. The other thing I also do is, besides the hole itself, the round hole, I put out like spikes, you know, I dig trenches, maybe 2 or 3 of them in addition to that, so that a place for the roots that'll be broken up and easy for the roots to go into. Because again, I mentioned earlier in my presentation, compaction is one of the biggest problems. Roots, you know, if they run into heavy clay, they just can't get through it. And so anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah, you want to help it as much. And I think also there's probably, it's a bit variable in the selection of tree that you're putting in, how hardy. So thank you for the input.
Yeah.
So this is cringeworthy. This is time and time again I hear seasoned gardeners, one of their biggest pet peeves is to see this style of mulching on trees where you cover the base and the crown of the tree, which is just not helpful to the tree. It creates potential root rot, and fungus, pests can live in there. And so the best practice is to do a light, 2 to 3 inches of mulch, and keeping the crown of the tree, which is this little angle here where the trunk is becoming roots, exposed to the air and sunlight. Also recommended to mulch to the drip line of the tree, so that's where the branches come out, and kind of the rain comes up over the widest branches when you first plant it. So this last photo here is my very favorite tree called Grandmother Oak. She's a chestnut oak, and she's a property line tree over by Huntley Meadows Wildlife Refuge in Alexandria. And this is one of my favorite students standing underneath it. And this tree was planted intentionally, I think, maybe 200 to 300 years ago, and has provided shade and habitat. We've seen raccoons and vultures and snakes nest in her, and maybe more than that. She's become part of lots of children's memories. So I circle back to be encouraged to follow your inspiration and joy when planting trees. And don't be afraid to fail. Plant again. Mm-hmm. And so the references here, fairfaxgardening.org, of course, has great suggestions. Plant native Nova natives, as Patrick suggested. Also, and a lot of my pictures were from a Green Spring Master Gardener Eco Savvy presentation.